off my table. Don't mind the regulars. Their language may be coarse at times, and their opinions, which are entirely their own, may often be misguided or downright idiotic, but they mean well. Help yourself to some shine and enjoy your stay.
I'm Tom, and I'm drinking a fairly decent Merlot.
So sophisticated.
Mm.
I'm Luke, and I'm drinking Hopping Hare from Badger's Brewery, Pale Ale.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm Arran. I'm drinking Hobgoblin, a ruby ale by Wyrd Brewery.
Excellent. So, first thing, most important thing, shag, marry, kill, Seamus, McMorning, or Jackdaw. Arran.
Ooh. Shag, marry, kill, Seamus, McMorning, Door. I think I would shag McMorning because you don't know what the fuck you're going to get out of that out.
I mean, yeah.
I would kill Seamus before he tries to kill me, which means then I'm married Jackdaw for life.
Okay.
And I suspect he's not the talkative type, so he'll probably leave me to my own.
True, yeah. I mean, I would have a problem with shagging McMorning because I feel like he's going to be heavily into BDSM, and you're
You
very
say
much
it
going to
like
be the
it's a
victim in
bad
that
thing.
situation, yeah. Luke?
I would totally join Aaron with McMorning in a big juicy freeway, I think. And then, well, I guess I'd have to marry Seamus if Jackdaw's taken.
Oh no, this is completely independent. You can.
No, I would anyway.
You'd marry Seamus.
He's right.
No, I'm thinking. I think you got to kill Seamus. I just don't trust him.
Exactly.
Kill my husband.
Yeah, probably. I'm going to marry McMorning because at least it would be entertaining. Horrific, but entertaining.
Doctors earn quite good wages, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Be a kept man.
Although he got sacked from Guild, so he hasn't got a job anymore.
Yeah,
he might be the burden in the relationship.
I mean, I'm more worried that I'm going to be the body in the relationship, but
well, his nurses are pretty, so
yeah, but he does feel like someone that would take his work home with him. This is my worry, but you know, so I guess I'm shagging Jackdaw, which
it's just gross.
Yeah, I mean, there's no good options here, really.
I mean, you thought of it, Tom. So
I know.
I think that says more about you than.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he spent some time working on the longer list around who he could potentially shag. So.
I mean, there's no point if you do it if you throw like Colette Dubois in there or something, is there?
Yeah.
Right. So, gentlemen, terrain. We all like terrain, right?
The best part of tabletop gaming.
I tell you what, I played a game with Rich a few weeks back before, when we were still allowed out of our houses, and playing in a new shop near us. They don't have any terrain, so I brought my box of terrain, and as soon as we got it all out on the table, just every single person passing by just stopped to ask what we were playing, and it makes such a difference having a good, nice-looking set of terrain on the table in terms of.
Absolutely, it's part of the immersive piece of the gaming, right?
I think. Although, did you see the photos of the game Rich and James played there a week before?
Yeah,
where they basically used chewing gum and bean cans. And...
yeah, they didn't have people stopping to ask what they were playing.
Nope.
I actually think it probably attracts new players to the game more than the models themselves in terms of seeing it played.
Yeah, I think particularly if you're playing in a venue or something where someone's on the other side of the room, as pretty as the models might be, they're not going to see them, but they will see the big fancy board with looming terrain or whatever it might be on there, and they'll wander over to just sort of have a look. And once they're having a look, it's a lot easier to engage them.
Yeah. So, what do we? I actually think the new terrain rules for M3 are really good. But are there any things that you guys feel are lacking? Is there any? What do we like to see on a board of terrain, basically, and what are the problems that we see?
With M3E, I was hoping that after M2E they changed the rules for severe terrain.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting with a negative.
Yep. Nope. Cool.
But yeah, they didn't, and it's still there. And it's probably, it just seems out of place in 3, where they streamlined most of their other rules. The severe terrain one just seems clunky.
What is it you don't like about it?
I was going to say the same thing.
It's just the kind of, what's the word? Hang on, you might have to edit me, Tom, because I can't think of the word.
Okay, let me try and. I think I know where you're going with this, and I kind of agree. So,
what's the word for like not one way or another? It's hard to.
Ambiguous.
That's the word. That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah, it's really,
totally
really ambiguous. It's kind of, you know, it's open to interpretation when you're kind of moving in or into or out of it, and you start having to measure fractions, and it's just.
Yeah. I wouldn't use the word ambiguous for that. I think it can be very messy. We've all done it. You end a move and go, right, I'm just going to toe into that forest over there, and yeah, you might knock off a millimeter of your movement. Who cares? And gain all the benefits of that cover.
And everyone seems to do it differently as well, which is.
Oh, really? Do what differently in terms of halving the movement?
No, just about like, you know, when you move onto it, some people will move like fully onto it until they're onto it, and then they'll start moving at half.
Oh yeah.
Whereas other people do it as soon as they touch it. It's just.
Oh, I've never even thought of the first interpretation.
It seems like I've seen people do it different ways, and it just seems like it could be streamlined like the rest of the M3 rules.
So
now that you say that, I could probably see that. It's a hangover from pretty much every tabletop game, right? There's the idea of some sort of terrain that slows you down and makes it difficult to move.
So let's give the example of the dearly departed Guild Ball. So that they have fast and slow terrain, and basically what each of them do, if at any point of your movement you touch this terrain, you get +2 or -2 to your movement flat.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's
I can see
why
that
cleaner way.
Yeah,
and also it means you can use different shapes because, first of all, so if you toe into that terrain, it's not really going to affect you in that turn that you move into it, because you've already finished moving anyway. If you've only got an inch left and you get -2 move, you just stop moving.
Right. Yeah, but
what it does is mean the start of the
turn.
next turn. Yeah, you're gonna be at -2 move.
Yeah, it's quite elegant as well because you avoid all the half moves and the sort of fractions of distance and things like that. And especially on the turn you're trying to leave, and you're saying, "Well, I've got 5 inches total movement." You know, at what point do I fully exit the terrain, and how much do I have left? Yeah. So
I mean, I would say that as soon as your base is no longer on it, but yeah, it makes it messy, and I think people avoid. I'll come on to this in my sort of thoughts on it, but it's not the cleanest way it could have been done. I mean, you could do it within the existing rules, theoretically, by just instead of classifying something as severe, classify it as hazardous staggered.
I was actually going to suggest maybe another way of doing severe would be, if you move into severe terrain, you just gain the staggered condition.
Which is that's the same, and that ends at the end of your activation, but it means you pick it up again at the start of the next one.
Yeah. I think that's
the issue with doing it that way is unimpeded, basically.
And can you tell me and Arran are both Jackdaw players as well? We're both like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Yep. So I did think about that, but you've got this thing where staggered goes at the end of your activation, right?
It does,
yeah. So if you move into terrain, it's fine because it will go at the end of your activation. There is an issue
so it doesn't help
players pushing people into into hazardous staggered terrain.
Yeah. I think it's something that's worth exploring, right? So I don't think it's something that the designers are going to do anytime soon. But I think it does mean that terrain makers and people designing boards on Vassal, right, can be a little bit more creative with how they want the thing to work, and
Yeah.
it's an easy enough, as you say, within the existing rule set for people to play with.
It's just that it makes, if you start classifying it as hazardous, it makes unimpeded, as I say, completely useless.
Hmm.
So you'd have to.
Oh, too bad if you're the riders lose out.
Well, you could just make unimpeded. You don't gain staggered from severe terrain.
Yeah, but that does require a
Yeah.
rules
So in
change.
terms of, you could easily redo it. You could just, if it was severe terrain, gives you staggered if you when you come in contact with it, or if you start any move, say, in it, you could, if you were going to change the rule book, you could do that. But us playing, say I'm making a board for a tournament I'm running, I can't go, well, that wood is going to be hazardous staggered, because it's that.
Well, you can, but there will be consequences, right? So,
yeah.
There's nothing stopping you doing that, because that players agree the terrain features when they start the game, right? So, and as a tournament organizer, you can decide the terrain features. So that you can do, but there will be consequences. The riders will lose out. Jackdaw players who have a way to move you around, like Jakuna, would get some benefits out of it. So,
I mean, this is actually. So one of the things I really like about the terrain rules for M3E is the hazardous rules themselves. I just think they're much more interesting than they were before.
Absolutely. The ability to sort of say, look, it's a point of damage, which probably most people default to adding other interesting conditions was a really simple change that was worth it.
Yeah, and this is something I'm playing around with the sort of boards I'm planning on building at the moment, is things like I want to do one with clouds of insects and flies and do hazardous distracted.
Nice.
They're not. It'd also probably be concealing as well, but it's that idea of, rather than being attacked by all these insects, you are, but they're not going to do sufficient damage to hurt you, even grotesquely oversized insects. What they are going to do is make you spend a minute just batting all these flies off you and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've got. I'm working on it's not like a custom board, but it's using like lots of not pre-made, but pre-bought scenery. I'm doing like a New Orleans style themed graveyard board.
Ah, cool.
And one of the things I've got on for that is I've already made them is hazardous ghosts. So they're basically hazardous distracted ghosts. And I've just bought loads of Reaper minis, sort of spooky ghost models, and put them on like large sort of 80mm bases. And then
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You can do some cool painter effects with that as well. So.
Yeah.
How would you model the flying bugs there, Tom?
Well, that's something I'm working on. First of all, that would have to be kind of an area terrain, so I would need to build. I think it might almost either be like a see-through thing where I paint the edges, so you've got kind of a danger area, basically, or even just use like pipe cleaners bent to the shape I want them, and then have a few freestanding bases of bugs of some description. I basically, every now and again, I just scour eBay trying to find something that suits. I've got some stuff, which is some Games Workshop Nurgly Fly stuff, which will kind of work. But
it's the scale piece to get it to look good, right? So you can go a bit bigger because it's Malifaux and the sort of crazy world of infected bugs. But if they go too big, they look a bit weird. So.
I was thinking about having like bystanders as well, because this board is I want to do like a city board, and the idea of having actual people, groups of people or individual people just hanging about on the board, so that it's not a conveniently empty
city street, right?
Yeah. But I'm still not sure how to do that, whether they would be again area terrain and whether it becomes like concealing and hazardous. I don't know.
Because the idea of sort of running through crowds is something you see in a lot of action sequences in film.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but
or you can have individual ones, make them destructible, and then it's up to you to decide, if you're playing Seamus and you take the destructible action on a person, I think we all know what's happened there. If you're playing Nellie Cochran, it's probably a very different action to destroy a person.
Yeah, that's a really fun idea. Actually, have people on the board that give you concealment and cover, so you can hide behind them, but make them distracted.
Stand behind bystanders and hide behind that group of children.
Yeah. So I think one of the big things that is so important in M3E, and it's important for every game, and it was important for M2E, but where you really see the difference now, I think, is having a good mix of terrain types on the board.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The obvious one is concealing, which it's trying to find new ways to do that other than, here's another bush. And try and balance out how much you do that. But I'm always looking for ways that I can go, right, it's a cityscape. Nothing here really, it doesn't make sense to put a load of trees in there, so I can't do that.
Yeah, so
I need to find other ways to get concealing terrain in there.
Yeah, it's a good point, because the tail end of M2E, I finished my city board that we took to nationals, and setting it up for 3, I'm severely lacking in concealing terrain on that board. I put it off for a long time, but I'm sort of starting to dabble in some ideas to put back onto that to sort of bring it up into the new era. And you can do some bushes and things like that. Like you're going to have like neat hedgerows and stuff like that if your city, works for that. But you're right, too much sort of greenery or wildness and forest and stuff doesn't have a natural place in a city board.
Yeah, I just with my crew, I want my boards to have a story behind them as well, to feel like a real place rather than random collection. I mean, so the board that I'm working on, I managed to get hold of some of the old terrain clip stuff. I've got like the streets of Malifaux and the buildings of Malifaux.
Sets of those back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is it terrain clips or is it terror clips?
Terror clips, that's the one. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to properly play with them, but I also really like the idea of doing different levels on a board, which M2E did not work at all.
Yeah.
I think we all took the vantage point section of the rulebook and went, well, that doesn't make any sense, so we'll just make our own house rules around it. I think the M3 rules for differing heights now make sense.
Yeah, they sorted it out quite a bit.
The shadow rules aren't intuitive when you read them, but when you put them on the board and actually play it, they work.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to describe the shadow is like an absolute aneurysm waiting to happen, but actually once you put it on the table, you go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I did that. I read it over and over again, going, this doesn't make any sense. And then looked on an actual table and went, that's just really simple.
Yeah.
Tom, just going back to something you said, you mentioned that you like your boards to have a story. How do you go about that? What's your starting point?
So now the reason I build boards is mostly of the school of Dave Brown, in that I'm building board, whereas Arran has made award-winning boards that are absolutely pieces of art. My main thing I need to do is make them functionable and good to play on is my first bit, and
transportable.
Transportable, yes, that's also handy.
Mine are barely transportable sometimes.
Yeah, I do think about how I'm going to get it all into one box. So, like I'm talking about using terrain clips. I'm going to sort of build them into permanent sort of 1 by 1 or 1.5 by 1.5 blocks, so that I'm obviously at the start of a tournament, I don't have to clip them all together. I can just put them in like
and if you glue them down nicely, right, you don't have the glaring clips sticking out and shining in your face, right? So,
there'll probably be a few of those just to clip various parts together,
and that's fine, right? Like a couple pieces here, but when having them all stacked up with the pretty art on them in a simple piece, that I think you can do something cool with that. And the ability then, when they're fixed, you can start customizing them and adding bits to them, and
yeah, that's sort of the idea. But
you see, I've got about three tables worth of terrain, and I've got the mats, but it's all pre-bought terrain. I haven't actually done anything scratch build yet, but it's something I really, really want to do. It's just finding the time, the space, and the money.
Yeah. I mean, what I mean by a story behind my board is, so I've only really got one board that I can currently use for Malifaux. I've got nearly finished one for the other side. Just need to actually find the time and space to get it all out and sort a few things out. But so for Malifaux, my Malifaux board, actually, I think the first thing I got for that was the mat, and it was this sort of street one. It had bits of greenery, and it's got paths, and it's got a big sort of square in the middle, and it's kind of the idea of, okay, well, this is like a town square here, and we've got like gardens and we've got bits, but it's not. It's a semi-urban area, let's call that. And then I went out and I bought terrain and kits that fit how I saw this scene. It wasn't a case of, I've got lots of different bits of scenery now, most of which still need to be built and need to be done. But it's having that story, that moment in your head for me, so that it all flows together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I when they released Von Stuck, I actually started drawing up like plans to do a Transmortis board. So kind of
cool.
underground labs in the sewers and stuff. But
that sounds very cool.
Yeah, it's really cool in my head, but so far I have done absolutely nothing towards it. It's just
there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. I would recommend delving into the world of styrofoam and carving, because then you can go really quite crazy with that.
Yeah, I've got some of that blue stuff.
That's amazing stuff. I've got piles of it because I pick it up when I can.
Extruded polystyrene.
That's the stuff. Yeah.
And here's a funny story to do with that. I bought that about a year ago, and just trying to find it online, and I realised that it's the same stuff they use for underfloor heating.
It is, yeah.
So I ended up buying loads of it in bulk because I was like, oh, it's cheaper the more you buy. And for the past year, all my adverts, every time I go anywhere online, are all for underfloor heating now.
You've tricked the Google.
Yeah, this guy's into underfloor heating, obviously. So let's show him.
The stuff with the underfloor heating, they normally only sell that up to about 20 mil. So if you want the really thick stuff, then you got to look elsewhere. But
the stuff I got is only 10 mil.
Yeah. So.
Weirdly, actually, this is another bit of a sidetrack, but it's finally happened. Like the Google adverts have finally just started showing me miniatures.
They've only just started showing you miniatures.
Yeah, it took a while, but it's happened.
Yeah, it's all the other dodgy shit you search for. So.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I derailed the conversation. What were we saying?
That's quite all right. I think that's very much the brand we're going for.
I think we're still on the story, right?
Yeah.
How do you approach that, and why? I think I probably start a little bit more abstract than you, Tom, or conceptual. I start very much with a very high level theme that I'm going for. So, the city board, I very much said I wanted some sort of Victorian London, style thing with sort of a little bit of cobbled streets and the sort of brick and stone buildings that have the sort of Tudor style on the first floor up, things like that. So that's kind of where I went, and it was probably a little bit more functional. I was thinking around how big can you make the footprint of the building before it gets obtrusive. And for that, I was sort of saying, well, I want to have it big enough that I can give it, cool features and make it look dynamic without it just being a bunch of buildings that it's an absolute pain to play around.
So how early
sorry?
Which at what point do you start to, so you said you start from that sort of you've got the visualization really in your head first as the concept.
And then I go sketches.
To apply that to the game or to apply to what you can actually do, which is the first one you look at?
I probably look at it from more the artistic lens around what new technique do I want to experiment with? What sort of style do I want to try? What new medium could I play with that I haven't done before? And then I start thinking about does that translate to something that would look good and be functional? And the game comes a little bit down, but it's one that I want to at least have the thought about the game before I start making stuff. I'm like properly making stuff. I normally build quite a few test pieces quite early on before I get anywhere, just to sort of see if it works. And for that board, I decided I wanted to do molding and casting. So I had a lot of experiments around, what could I mold, what worked, what didn't. Molding styrofoam, you can do, but you got to be careful that it doesn't stick in the mold, because it's quite porous. So you got to seal it quite well and things like that. And then figuring out, once you pour the building, the sort of wall in plaster, what is an appropriate width for the building that it can still stand up properly, and it's not going to cost you a fortune or weigh a ton. Because my first couple of buildings, I did the walls way too thick and I'd used an absolute ton of plaster. And then the thing was bloody heavy. So I scrapped that idea and went back to a much thinner design, which I was much far happy with in the end.
This is like some next level shit to me. I'm still at just getting 2 bits of extruded polystyrene and drawing the bricks on them. It's like
I mean, yeah, I'm smiling and nodding along as we go, but yeah, for me, it's like, 2 bits of styrofoam and just smash them together until I make a building. That's basically what Arran just said.
You say that years ago there used to be a fantastic website, like a site that I used to lurk in, that did terrain stuff. And one guy came up with a terrain idea with using the extruded polystyrene to get those sort of mesas you see in sort of Western American sort of the sort of arid deserty areas, right? Basically, you cut the rough shape of the rocks and you beat it with a hammer, and it looks really good.
Nice.
You can do a lot with
violence.
Yeah. So yeah, and this is why I said, like, there's a lot of, for me, is about experimenting with the medium. Like, what can you do? And I probably play most tabletop board games so I can make terrain.
Nice. I mean, I think I started playing tabletop games so I could paint the miniatures. Yeah, the gaming was kind of a secondary thing that came along.
Yeah, the game is kind of what you keep doing because it's fun and it gives you the social aspect, right?
Yeah.
I'm enough of a hermit as it is that actually getting out and gaming is what keeps you doing it, right?
And for me now, I think that's the main thing, the social aspect. But it's painting, and terrain was never certainly didn't used to be one of my big things. That was just something that was there. But I think it's doing the henchman stuff that is really sort of, and the marvel that is Dave Brown, and looking at all the stuff that he does and provides for the community.
He's magic, right?
It's just incredible.
He's like Mary Poppins of gaming boards. He just arrives and he opens his van and they just keep coming out. So I helped him set up nationals the last 2 years, and and it's just an incredible experience just to see it all come together. Just how many boards he's got in that poor little van.
It's like he's the kind of living the dream, isn't it? We're all trying to aspire to be David Brown.
Yeah,
I want to own that many tables full of
gaming boards.
I mean, I live in a studio flat. If I had as many boards of terrain as Dave Brown has, I don't think I would have room for my bed. Yeah, it's me or the terrain, basically.
You can make a bed in amongst it, I'm sure.
Yeah, may not be comfortable, but you can find a gap to fit in, a little hollow.
I mean, what do we think about? This has reminded me in sort of novelty boards, things like, is it one of Dave Brown's the Dreamer board, which is on a kid's playmat?
I'm not really into them.
No, I think there is a way to do it. I think, and it comes back to how you look at the pieces and how you see them, right? Like if you look at a mini, and it's at a certain scale, right? And when we paint them, we exaggerate certain features. So you give them excess shadows and highlights and stuff like that to create that ultra realism look. If you just plonk other stuff on the board next to it, it looks out of place. So when you see people and they sort of take one of the sort of kiddie gaming mats and they just put a bunch of kids' toys on it, it just looks like kids' toys with some pretty miniatures in between them if they're painted, depending on the player. So I think if you were to go that route and you remodeled them and you repainted them so that they had the right scale and they had the right shadows and they had the right look, I think you could make it work. But I think I would also expect you to add some weird elements to it. So, if you want these kiddies toys, you sort of, I don't know, I'd want them sort of looking somewhat realistic and then having monsters coming out of them or whatever it might be, so that it fits the game and it doesn't just look like Lego blocks or blocky like wooden toys just sitting on a foam board. So
Fair.
Yeah,
No,
that told you guys.
no, it's entirely subjective. I know there's some people that really don't like the terrain to be that removed from reality, in terms of the core concept here.
Yeah.
And I absolutely have no problems with that.
But that's why I think that Dreamer is the one where I think you can make it work, because you got to make it fit the Dreamer narrative, though. So I think you need that elements of looks like the reality of the figures in that world, but with something coming out of it, right? So having it look, I don't know, it's hard to sort of articulate that one, but having it look like it's part of their world rather than they've been plonked up and put in like Toy Story Land, right? I think making it more weird is the way to go, and I think it can be done, but I think it does require at least a repaint and a reskin and probably some like modifications to some of the toys. I wouldn't just lift and drop.
So one of the things I was thinking about was doing, when I get onto getting more other side boards, is that I felt like doing a Meridian / Gibbering Hordes one and using aquarium decorations basically, and building it that and doing it as a very surreal underwater thing.
I think you could get that to work.
Yeah.
I think with aquarium things, they often come pre-painted.
Mm-hmm.
So out of the box, they look better than children's toys. But often I would recommend giving them a bit of a repaint and a reskin.
Yeah, that might work.
Like when I did the sort of forest board last year for nationals, I used quite a lot of those cheap aquarium plants, but I repainted all of them. So, but it wasn't a full repaint. What I did is they're quite like that rubbery plastic stuff. So you spray them with not primer, a varnish, a matte varnish, and then you can give them washes, and it just creates a bit more of a natural shading. And that alone just takes it from they look like aquarium plants to I can see what these look like now. And that's because I was not going to produce as many plants in some sort of handcrafted way on that board without going that route. But I didn't want to just take them out the box and glue them down.
That's cool.
My wife would probably tell me that I'm the only one who sees the difference, but
you're not, Arran.
Thank you, Luke. What else would you add to the board, though?
I'm not sure yet. It's very early days with that concept. I've got a few that I want, at least a couple of ideas that I want to build for Malifaux first.
Yeah, I would also recommend picking up those pieces from eBay or something similar. Never buy them from a pet store, because you would be amazed at the price they try to charge you for those things.
Yeah. There's a couple of places near me where I'm thinking like Wilco's and stuff seem to do.
Yeah, they might do it
pretty cheaply. I did buy from them, which I was trying to do something else with, but like multicolored gravel for the bottom of an aquarium.
Oh yeah.
And I tried them. I was basically trying to use them to weigh down some trees that I had, so they didn't to make them bottom heavy, but they weren't heavy enough, so I ended up doing something else. Yeah, I actually ended up just getting big, like stones, basically stone gravel, and putting them on the top so that it looked like a rocky forest bit there.
Okay.
But I was the plan is to pass that bag of multicolored gravel over to Rich anyway, who was doing the. Someday we'll get round to putting his Gibbering Hordes on bases.
You say that the man who's renowned for being the amazing Tara player in the UK, who's been playing her for years, and she's still, blue tack to the base. Sorry, Rich.
Pause 1 sec there, guys. I need the toilet.
Okay.
I'll do that and fetch a beer.
All right, cool.
Okay. I'll sit here quietly. Lonely, so lonely, so lonely and dissatisfied.
Closing time. You don't have to go home, but the regulars should probably go and sleep it off. We'll be back soon, and I hope you can join us again. In the meantime, you can contact us on Twitter at Brewy's Table or email on thebrewmasterstable@gmail.com. Please do play heedlessly, chat brazenly, but drink responsibly.
Next time on the Brewmaster's Table.
Yeah, my first beer appears to have evaporated.
I just use a knife, not even a hobby knife, just like a kitchen knife, and hack at it.
I'm not much bigger than 6 inches.
I'm so embarrassed to be seen with you right now.
It may come up in a future episode. Just you've been warned.
Or lager. It's lager, right?
Here's something that I wanted to talk about earlier but forgot.
And cut.